Golden Sun, The Lost Age, which might seem like a subtitle of an original game in a series, but it is not, as a young version of me discovered when this game was gifted to me by a relative. I did not know what was going on.
Had the same experience with this.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, this game is all about deception.
Yep.
And I am joined on my quest to discuss Golden Sun, The Lost Age, by Pete the Knight Busby.
What's going on, everybody? This is actually one of my, earliest RPGs. I enjoyed it a lot. Happy to revisit it for this particular podcast. Fun fact for this podcast. So Alexander Graham Bell, supposed inventor of the telephone, although some people suggest he stole it, both his wife and mother were deaf. But Alexander Graham Bell didn't really seem to like deaf people all that much. He wanted to teach the deaf to speak, not use any sign language, and try to integrate them fully into society. It's like based on his suppression of sign language and things like that, Bell's often viewed negatively by sort of modern day scholars or people embracing deaf culture. The idea that, sign language is a valuable language in and of its own right. So just interesting. Yeah.
Did he create the phone in order to give his wife and mother inspiration to hear?
I don't know. I'm not sure why. I mean, really, supposedly I shouldn't say supposedly. There's a lot of controversy that he stole the patent in the first place, either from another guy whose name I forget or an Italian inventor whose name I also forget.
It was probably that guy, but
yeah, so who knows why he did it.
I like to think that he invented the phone just to be like, honey, I'm hearing someone from all across town. You can't even hear me right now.
It's very
Try harder.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. It's not a great way to inspire somebody, but Bell doesn't seem like the greatest guy anyway.
Out of curiosity, he didn't like deaf people so much that he found a woman who was deaf and married her?
Yeah, and his mother. Very odd. Very odd situation.
I mean, I could understand if you're like growing up and you're like, Mommy, toy, and she's like, what? Yeah. And then he grew. It was his dark origin story.
True, but to marry a woman as well. It's just curious. I don't know how they met. I guess I could look into it further, but
it would be a pretty great quirky comedy if all the way just Graham Bell is befriending and encountering deaf people just constantly. He's just seething. Just can't stand it. Well, the second voice you heard, and the second co-host of this show, is M. the Mage Palladino.
Hello, happy to be here talking about one of my favorite RPGs from my childhood. This was probably one of the more formative games I've played in my life, I would think. Yeah, it's pretty good. Should play it.
End of podcast.
Yeah.
End of podcast.
Shortest
job,
podcast.
guys.
Yeah, we should do that for an April Fool's at some point.
Yep.
Oh, crap. Edit that out.
Okay.
Ruined forever.
I'll figure that out.
Don't actually edit that out. It's okay.
Okay.
They'll forget. No one will remember. But before we get to this lovely game, we have an email. You can get in touch with the show at DeepListensPod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. You can hit up our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. And just a reminder, we're on Spotify, and we also are on iTunes, so if you could rate or rank us on whatever you're using right now, that'd be nice. That'd be a cool thing of you to do, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that'd make you super rad.
Mm-hmm.
Super rad. Guaranteed, certified, super rad. So,
get a certificate.
We have an email, and this comes in from Chris Zombie Pie Redacted.
First time, long time.
It's not really so much an email as I opened a coconut, and inside was a series of just Scrabble letters arranged in the form of an email. I don't know how he got it in there, but
Curious.
Look, he's a hard worker. And he says, Dear fellow survivors of the Birdpocalypse, I hear you are playing a bullshit JRPG without me again. Well, have fun with that. Fun fact, Golden Sun, The Lost Age was the third JRPG I ever played before I entered my Final Fantasy Blood Pact with Gino. The other games, if you're interested, were Chrono Trigger and Earthbound. All I remember about the game is saying to myself, this shit is fucking slow. after completing Ayers Rock and immediately booting up Diablo 2. However, we are not here for me to bellyache about my poor life choices, so I've decided to play each of you like the fiddles you are and ask you separate questions. To M,
no.
I've recently started playing D&D for the first time. Currently, I have the starter set, Player's Handbook, and Xanthar's Guide to Everything. As someone who wants to play the game a few more times before considering being a DM, what's my next step? Do I buy the campaign books, or do I start reading up on the monsters? Which books are worth it, and which books should be avoided at all costs for a newcomer not interested in being a DM? So you go first, then I will continue the email.
Okay. So he has which books?
Xanthar's Guide to Everything.
Yep. That's pretty
the
good.
Starter's Manual.
Mm-hmm.
And a starter set, Player's Handbook, Xanthar's Guide to Everything. Just those three.
Okay. And he doesn't want to be a DM, or he does?
He does at some point.
Okay.
He seems like he's interested in one day becoming a DM, but not yet. He wants to play a few more games first so that he's not jumping in without experience.
Right.
Doesn't just want to slide into those DMs.
Yep.
Yeah.
As we all do. So the next thing you would probably pick up would be Volo's Guide is pretty good if you don't want just the regular monster manual. That's like a monster handbook for regular use. You can make characters out of there. I like it. It's pretty good. There's a more advanced version of that, but you don't need that until you're like further down the line, or just the Dungeon Master handbook, just because there's a lot of information there that's good for regular players, and not just DMs.
Thanks for the suggestions. Next part of the email. To Pete, I have a fun basketball question, but it's not what you expect.
Oh, good.
A skit I had planned for the basketball podcast but was cut due to time constraints was a segment where I would read bad NBA-related tweets. To taunt you, I'd like to recite what Gino and I would widely regard as one of the worst NBA hot takes either of us has legitimately ever seen. No joke, I've only seen Gino legitimately angry twice in our limited time together, and this tweet is one of those times. I'll warn you right now, this tweet is not only a person's real opinion, but it may well be one of the worst things I have seen said about the NBA. Seriously, you're not ready. So without further ado, Dirk is mellow without that one lucky ring. That one ring got people thinking he wasn't a perennial loser his whole career. And Dirk is mellow with a ring, and can't nobody change my mind. The third tweet pointed out that Melo averaged more points per game, rebounds, and assists than Dirk, and Melo's best season had better numbers than Dirk's MVP season.
I mean, no? Can we just be like, clearly this is incorrect?
Yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for the fact that they played different positions, one of them played center at a time when he's the greatest shooting center of all time, and the other one is like an above-average small forward.
And one is a universally beloved figure who spent his entire career with a single team. Like, not that that's completely relevant, but it's not unrelevant.
Yeah. I mean, it's not irrelevant, but the important thing is he basically was the first stretch four that was good, amazing. He completely redefined how you have to guard his team for as long as he was on the team, whereas Melo, like, Dirk just being on the court makes everyone else better. Yeah. Melo being on the court doesn't do shit for anyone else.
I love how they just, like, discount the one ring, too, as if, like, you know, he didn't win it. But he did.
As if beating the Heat was easy.
Yeah, it was just a lucky bounce. Like, no, like, he put the team on his back.
And Melo, at no point in his career, has taken a team. How far did he get into the playoffs? Like, past the first round ever?
Second round, maybe?
Second round?
I don't think he ever made it to the conference finals.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, Melo is just a really good ISO scorer who barely made his teammates better. He's like Kevin Durant when Kevin Durant wasn't on the Warriors. That's the hottest take. Kevin Durant's much better than Melo has ever been.
Kevin Durant's just Melo.
I mean, in a way. We'll talk about this in an NBA podcast. This is not the time.
I tried to follow that, and that just sounded like so many words that I did not understand.
Carmelo Anthony, Dirk Nowitzki. These are people.
Okay.
Kevin Durant, also a person. Basketball, a sport.
There you go. You're caught up.
That's it.
Cool. And that was a bad take.
Final question to Gino. How do you feel about cloacas? Let me just look up what this is.
They're fine.
Oh, don't do that.
The internet
They're edible
says
holes.
a common cavity at the end of the digestive tract for the release of both excretory and genital products in vertebrates, except most mammals and certain invertebrates. The cloaca is present in birds, reptiles, amphibians, most fish, and monotremes.
Yeah, I love monotremes.
It also, in archaic terms, means a sewer. So I'm going to say pro. I'm pro cloaca.
Okay.
Thank you for your email.
I guess.
Again. Yep, I guess. Great. We read it. We can't unread it. Next up, Golden Sun, The Lost Age. Em, why don't you introduce Golden Sun, because you picked the game.
I did.
What's a Golden Sun?
Golden Sun, you actually have no idea what Golden Sun is until the very end of the game, so I'm not going to explain that yet. Golden Sun, The Lost Age is the sequel to Golden Sun, which was a Game Boy Advance game taking place in the world of Weird, which is a flat Earth, which is in the midst of a crisis. There is a lack of the 4 base elements, which are Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Mercury, which are related to Earth, fire, wind, and water in that order. The lack of elements are because the 4 lighthouses have been turned off for generations, and because of that, the world is starting to fall apart. Your job as Felix and his friends is to go around Weird lighting these lighthouses. The good news is 2 of them are already covered, so you don't have to worry about those.
Oh, good. So the game's short.
Yeah. Well, no.
Very much no.
No. The last 2 lighthouses take up probably about 40 hours, I think I clocked. There's a lot of gameplay because you are adepts, which is a in-universe term for those who are attuned to these elements and can use psi energy, which is sort of psychic spells to manipulate the world around you.
I believe that's copyrightable magic, is what that...
Yes, pretty much. They get to put a little copyright symbol next to it in all of the dialogue. Yeah. So, basically the majority of the game is going around trying to find these psi energies so that you can advance through dungeons, and then eventually you'll have what you need to enter the lighthouse and complete it.
Yes.
And that's basically the whole game.
So the psi energies kind of play double duty as commands that you can use in combat and almost in a Pokemon sort of way.
Yeah.
Things you can use in the field to manipulate the environment.
Yep.
And so you kind of get a dual function there.
Mm-hmm. It's like a lot of if every move you had was an HM, that's pretty much what it is.
What a dark world that would be.
Speaking of Dark World, that's the sequel to...
Good get.
Yeah. I'm not going to talk about that one. It's bad.
And on top of this general adepts and picking up psi energy, you also have this interesting mechanic with these creatures called Jinn, spelled D-J-I-N-N, where you capture these tiny creatures and you can equip them to your characters to bestow them with a combination of stat buffs and also abilities or spells.
Yes, and class changes as well are governed by Jinn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's almost a Final Fantasy VI sort of leveling system for those who are familiar with that game. You kind of unlock different summons and then can equip them to characters, and it buffs their stats and then gives them summon-specific magic and spells. But this game really, I think, draws a lot of inspiration from the Pokemon games and, I guess, the Final Fantasy games. And a little bit of, Dragon Warrior. You're kind of just standing across the way from your opponents, and you're just wailing away at them in true turn-based combat.
Yep.
What did you think of the game's gameplay? Like, walking around, actually getting into battles?
So, I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff we're going to talk about, but one thing I wanted to raise, so I'm going to executive move and do it.
Do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing it. So, in terms of the battle mechanics, you have magic, basically just straight up attacks, skills based on your class, and you also have summons.
Mm-hmm.
And summons require you basically to unequip the Djinn and then use those standby Djinn to summon basically big monsters to attack for you. I just completely disregarded the summons. They don't seem worth the cost of the debuffs of unequipping the Djinn. And I was just wondering if any of you guys bothered with the summons.
So, late into the game, I was using summons more often in, like, boss battles. In regular combat, I just hit attack over and over again.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, because you get really good equipment throughout the game. The equipment system is also super in-depth. Each item that you have can unleash an ability and just really flashy stuff. So you pretty much don't need to do anything besides hit attack for anything besides, like, the boss battles that you come across. And you just keep all of your Djinn in active mode, so you get the most attack, health, your psi energy power, and just you're pretty good not messing with it.
Yeah, I think in most games where you've got these giant bursts that are going to debilitate you shortly, they're really best used when you're up against a boss or something where you really need to take the hit, and where just pushing them over the edge is enough to get you to safety. Or, in case of emergency, break glass.
Which in this case, I mean, it's a little unfortunate just because a lot of the summons are super cool.
Yeah.
Just to look at. Like, they're giant dragons or weird ninjas and magicians and things.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth just watching the 7-minute YouTube video, all of them compiled, if nothing else.
Yeah, it's neat. A lot of the summons you have to, like, go into a separate dungeon to find, as opposed to just, like, have the Djinn ready. So it's a neat little, like, detour if you want to collect them all. And they all have, like, their own little animation whenever they are cast in battle. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so once the Djinn are put in standby, how do you get them back to active?
So once they're in standby, you have to use a summon, and then they'll, like, refresh one at a time. So if you use a Mercury summon, then you'll get one back. I don't know how it determines which one you get back, but each one has a counter next to it. So at the end of your turn, you get one.
Okay, so they come back one at a time after a turn. It's not like you have to wait a ton of time. You can use them multiple times. You'll just be kind of down for a few turns.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And you do get an element buff for doing a summon, like based on whatever that summon's key element is. But yeah, I don't really think that offsets the cost still.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this game pretty much, I mean, there's a lot of depth, but it seems like not a lot of it matters because it's a very straightforward JRPG from the early 2000s. Like, the difficulty isn't especially high. So you just kind of walk forward mashing A for a lot of it. And you can get the depth, but it's mostly just for styling on fools.
Exactly. Like, the most intricate point really is sort of this Djinn allotment, because you can really equip any to any character for the most part. So it's really a question of, okay, mathematically, how do I break it down such that I get the best combination of classes? But I mean, like Gino said, ultimately, you can just pick whatever you want, really, and you'll probably find, provided you have, a healer of some sort.
Yeah, and I do like that the djinn, you have to actually catch them.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
each djinn has its own little personality and little specific buffs. So it's not just like every Earth djinn is the same Earth djinn. They all
Right.
have different specialties and reasons why you'd want to equip one to another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, each one is unique. They have their own, like, whatever effect they have. There's not really any that overlap so much as, like, the ones that hit things. But the rest of them are, like, anything from debuff your opponent, buff yourself, raise one of your guys. So there's a lot of, like, useful stuff from them. So
Yeah, so since
sweet.
the game's combat's so boilerplate, how about the story?
Oh, there is so much of it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to make an executive move here.
Go for it.
Why is it always flying boats? It seems like every JRPG I play wants to give me a boat, and then they want my boat to have wings.
Excuse me, sir. It's called an airship.
Oh, excuse me.
Well, in this game, your boat gets wings, and then it can fly.
Yeah.
Do they call it a flyboat?
I don't know if
They don't really address it.
No, they're just like, it has wings now, and you're like, great,
Yep.
let's cruise.
Yep.
Well, I think it's just because of the natural progression that you want when you're doing an overworld exploration. You start walking, then maybe you get a horse or a chocobo or something or a car that makes you.
You say, and then you get a chocobo. Like, that happens in any other series.
I mean, it doesn't happen in any other series, but it happens every time in that series.
Mm-hmm.
But or a car, something that makes you move faster and generally not run into enemies. And then you get a boat or like a canoe, and that canoes will let you move through rivers. Boats will let you move over the ocean. Then the next step is to get something that flies. So it kind of expands the world naturally. You start out exploring a really tight environment, and then you can explore the whole world by the end of it.
Maybe I'm just projecting because Golden Sun was one of the earlier RPGs I played, but it seems like the solution is always give the boat wings, as opposed to just like, here's a plane, or here's a blimp or something.
Well, it's fantasy, so you gotta have something fly that shouldn't fly.
All right. I guess that's fair.
Because if they want something to fly, I mean, a zeppelin would work. You could give the boat a balloon.
Yeah.
But I feel like that'd piss you off too.
I don't know what the solution would be. Just walk everywhere, I guess.
No more quests. We're not going anywhere.
The world starts small and stays small.
Mm-hmm. This is not that game, though.
All right, I guess, should we move past boats?
Sure.
There's more to the story, oddly enough.
So, all of us encountered this game without playing the first game originally, correct? We were all hornswoggled?
Yes, very much.
So, the first game, you are chasing after the protagonists of the second game, trying to stop them from lighting the lighthouses.
Yeah.
So, this game would have been a, shocker if you picked it up after playing the first game because you're playing the bad guys now.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out the bad guys weren't bad. They were misunderstood.
True.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
They were being misled by some floating eye thing. And this is the result.
Yeah.
Yeah, the floating eye is kind of a dick, too.
Yeah.
Have you ever met a floating eye that wasn't an asshole?
That's a good point. They're all pieces of shit.
That's fair.
So what did you think of the characters?
They're fine. I mean, it's like not... If you want good character development from an RPG, go play Chrono Trigger. Like, I don't particularly dislike them. I don't particularly like them.
There's nothing groundbreaking as far as the characters go. Like, they all have their own sort of personality, but I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely not like a novel characterization.
How anime, like, placeholder character are they?
Well, there's the like silent protagonist.
Okay.
Mhm.
There's his like spunky younger sister.
Yep. Spunky girl character. Yep.
Yeah, it's all pretty. It's all pretty. Well, I mean, what's Piers' deal? I'm trying to think of like what his
So he's
archetype.
I
He's
don't
lost.
know.
Really, I mean, trying to get home.
Yeah, he's from a lost city, and he's trying to fix his boat so he can go back
Right.
there. And
Basically, a non-sunk Atlantis.
yeah,
Is anyone really horny all the time?
No.
no,
Well,
Maybe
they missed
Alex. We don't know that much about Alex.
yeah. We see him a few times, and he's supposed to be like a main antagonist, and then he just doesn't show up.
Yeah, let's pause for a second on Alex's plan here.
Mhm.
So his whole deal is he's basically saying like, yeah, it's my job to make sure you stick to the mission.
Mhm.
Like Alex's job is to make sure Felix and all of his party go and light the lighthouses. But instead of like sticking with them or helping them or doing anything remotely useful, he just checks in every once in a while and be like, hey, Felix, you taking care of this? Yep, that's great.
So he's a middle manager.
Basically,
Pretty
until
much.
at the end when he's like, no, I want all the power for myself. And you're like,
Just
Alex, like, where did this come from?
Just
Mhm.
like every middle manager.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Oh, I see you successfully did all the tasks. Now allow me to take all the credit.
Great.
Mhm.
Give it to me.
Pretty much. Like, I was just doing the final boss battle, and in a cutscene before that fight starts, the floating eye we talked about earlier is like, oh yeah, Alex is over there at Soul Sanctum trying to take the Golden Sun, which is the first time I think we hear the words Golden Suns.
Yeah, I've played this game twice now, and I still have no idea what it is.
So, when the lighthouses are lit, the golden sun rises and gives alchemy back to the world.
Gotcha. And alchemy's basically the life force holding everything together. Without alchemy, the planet becomes flat Earth, and all the
Yeah.
continents fall off the edge.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
Which
basically
is-
the plot of Bastion, kinda.
Is it?
Maybe.
I mean, no.
I've never played Bastion.
No,
Mhm.
Bastion. The world is fallen and broken into a bunch of floating islands, but it's for different reasons. We'll probably play that at some point, so I won't spoil it.
We should.
I don't think there's any way to necessarily answer this, but I'm curious, like how innovative of an idea this was at the time
Hmm.
to like make the Grendel move. Like, all right, we're gonna tell this one from the perspective of the antagonist.
I don't know, actually. Like, let's see.
I mean, for a sequel, it's a pretty unique move.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get games where you play both sides of it. You know, sometimes you play Sonic the Hedgehog, and sometimes you play Shadow the Hedgehog.
Or Halo
Mhm.
2.
Yeah, Halo 2, you play as the Covenant, but it's not usually in the same. It's not usually a direct sequel. Like this one passes the torch, and then it turns out the villains you were chasing after were actually doing the right thing, but for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. They were right all along.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
their bosses, their middle managers, were wrong. So
Mm-hmm.
when they started their own company with the same
I
ideas,
don't
it's
know.
okay.
Don't think about it too hard.
I would be curious to, I mean, none of us played the first one, but I'd be curious how long they were setting this up. Like, because, you know, Felix and his whole team, they're not, like, if you played another Final Fantasy game and it turned out Sephiroth was right all along,
Mhm.
like, that'd be ridiculous. You're like, this man's pure evil. But, like, Felix and them don't seem like bad people. They're not necessarily villains, unless the first game, like, really had a drastically different tone.
Nah. I think Felix, like, might talk to you a few times in the first one, and he's like, we're doing it because we have to, or something like that.
Yeah, because their parents are hostages.
Yeah. Which is also a point that comes up real late in this game.
Yeah. They take a hard left turn on that one.
Yeah.
But if alchemy, so no one knows that alchemy being absent from the world is causing the cataclysm, right?
Like the guy who's the scholar. His name starts with a K, I think.
Kraden?
Yeah, he has like a theory.
Yeah, and then we go to Lemuria, and they are like, oh yeah, we knew about this the whole time.
We weren't doing shit about it.
Yeah, we weren't going to say anything. But...
It seemed like a hassle.
We're sort of in the middle of the world, so it won't get to us for a while.
We're really treating this like global warming here.
Yep.
We're at the center of the world. Everyone else is falling off. We'll be fine.
Dude, like when you look at the map, like the lighthouses,
Mm-mm.
they're towards the edges.
Yeah.
Like if a lighthouse falls off the edge, like I guess everybody's just screwed.
That's a good question that I was thinking about, because the last one you go to is in Prox, which is like the far north, and it's like the lighthouse is here, and then you walk like a few feet up, and that's the edge of the world. So
Nick of time.
yeah, could have
Just got
gotten
there.
real bad.
So why do people think that getting the Golden Sun would be a bad thing? Like what? How is this anything but the most obvious thing to do?
So, what's his name? Floating Eye.
Yeah.
Floating Eye offers an explanation where he's like, listen, like, and it's a shit explanation too. Like,
Call Floating Eye Jonathan.
Jonathan's like, if you don't get alchemy, the world's going to be destroyed for sure. But if you do get alchemy, maybe somebody, wink wink Alex, is going to try to use it to take over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's basically like, okay, so you're going to tell me if we don't get alchemy, we're all screwed. If we do get it, maybe we're screwed? Like,
But,
I guess we'll get alchemy.
A type of screwed where it's like, it's not good from a moral perspective, but everyone's not dead.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if Alex wins and he's now dictator of the world, like, is that worse than not existing? I mean, it's a question to ask.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of literature that has some opinions on that.
Sure.
It seems like it's trying to make this grand, like, oh, the evil of men will undo us eventually.
Turns out we were the most dangerous animal all along.
Oh, not again.
Uh,
So, is Alex especially sinister? Because his name's Alex.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like,
Not really.
he just checks in from time to time until the very end when he's like, I was evil all along. But you never fight him, I don't think.
mhm.
But
I don't think so.
You know, a villain doesn't always have to have a villainous name. You know, like a Kefka or a Sephiroth or an Ultimecia. But it helps.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think you want your villain to be named Alex.
And, like, even if Alex wins and he's now dictator of the world, like, yes, I'm God Emperor Alex.
Shit. Just even Alexander. Just use the full name, bud. You're an adult.
It worked out for Alexander the Great.
I know.
It's true.
Just stretch it out.
Mm.
But so, like, let's, again, just to revisit why Floating Eye is a piece of shit. So his whole plan, too, Floating Eye takes your hostage parents, which we just found out you had hostage parents when, I guess, Felix and Isaac explained it 10 minutes before the end.
Yeah.
And he turns them into a three-headed dragon
Oh, no.
that you then kill. That's the final boss, is you kill your parents. You don't know they're your parents when you kill them, but you do. And everybody's basically just like, I guess Floating Eye was testing us. We passed. Let's turn on the lighthouse.
See, I didn't even, like, I was just at the final boss battle, and I did not get that reveal. But now that you say it, like, how could I not see that?
How is it a test if you don't know that the dragon is your parents? Also, if it's a test of your faith, why does it have to be a dragon?
I guess you could have just stabbed your parents. Yeah, like a sort of Isaac situation.
Yeah, that would have been a lot more fucked up if they were your parents and not a three-headed dragon trying to kill you.
Then we don't get the epic boss battle at the end.
It's true. That boss battle's a pain in the ass, though.
Yeah.
So the three-headed dragon has a move that just resets all your Jin. And
Which, as we discussed, those are what give you your stat buffs.
Yeah.
So having them all reset puts you at, like, the lowest possible level, and then it just does a big burst damage thing that kills everybody.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think we didn't call out that in this game you're actually fighting with, once you get the additional characters, because the squad from the first game joins up with the squad from the second game, and then you have hashtag squad goals together.
Mm-hmm.
And when your party is fighting, the first 4 characters, or 3? It's 4, right?
4,
a row of
yes.
4.
Yeah.
Then that group is fighting, and if characters go down, they get filled in for by the characters in the back row.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're 8 deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're actually all capable of coming into the same battle, unlike other games of the era where, ostensibly there's a party of like 5 or 6 people just kind of hanging out just off screen all the time.
Yeah. The problem is you get your other 4 characters like basically 2 dungeons before the last dungeon. So they're like level 25 while you're 40.
Mm-hmm.
And they are not very good.
No, you should definitely cheat. You can look up codes and you can import like data, quote unquote data, from the first game in order to max like their stats and their gen and everything.
Yeah.
If you want them to be useful, it's pretty much what you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
So they desperately wanted to encourage you to buy both games.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yep. Which a good way to incentivize people to do that is to put a 2 on the end of the name. And then maybe we would have started with the first one.
Yeah.
I don't even remember like how I stumbled on this game in the first place.
I remember because I was a young child in a GameStop and I was like, I like anime. This looks very anime. I've never heard of this series. And it was.
I was like, I like parent murder. Is there any game that let me murder my parents?
I'm in a dark place right now. Let me tell you about Good Charlotte.
I'm trying to get into MCR, but that's some harder stuff. I'm not ready for that yet.
Yeah, I ended up, I think, getting this because a friend of mine spoke highly of Golden Sun, and I, like an idiot, purchased Golden Sun: The Lost Age, thinking that this was the game they were talking about. Because why would you name a game this way? And so I started with the second game, didn't know what was going on at any point, played it for a while, not really understanding the mechanics fully, because it doesn't tutorialize you too much.
No.
Because they expect that you played an entire other game with the same mechanics. And I just eventually gave up because I didn't know who anyone was, and the story wasn't good enough to make me care.
No, and I mean, as we've established, like, none of these questions get answers. I mean, we still don't know what the Golden Sun is.
Yeah,
I think they try to answer it in the third one.
Oh, good.
Which is a good place to do that.
Does that one have a number?
That one, I don't think
I don't think
does.
it's Golden Sun 3. I think it's just Golden Sun Dark Dawn.
I think so, yeah.
It still doesn't have a number.
Great. That reminds me of an anecdote about the game Too Human, which came out for the Xbox 360. I forget who the lead developer was, but you played some sort of cyber Viking.
Cool.
And it was futuristic and sci-fi stuff, but everything's Norse inspired, so everything's Ragnarok and shit like that. And during interviews talking about the game, they were talking about what their favorite class was, and someone said it was like the Valkyrie or something. But this game, that isn't in this game. The Valkyrie is planned for the third game in the series. And they were promoting the first game. And the first game did not sell well, so there was never a third game.
Oh. Yeah. Oof.
What's your favorite character class in this game? Oh, don't worry. You'll see it in 2015. When the grand plan
eventually
occurs. Yeah, so I would say if you have a giant MacGuffin that's the name of your game and you want people to care about it, maybe explain what it is in the first game and not the third.
Mm-hmm.
It would help, yeah.
Like, maybe they talk about it in the first one, but it does not come up at all in the second one.
Well, it can't, even if it's the guiding force, the entire motives of the party have changed.
Yeah.
Right? Before it was all about stopping the lighthouses from getting lit. Now it's all about lighting them. So if the Golden Sun was in the first game, it must have been some sort of apocalyptic terror. In which case, why call it the Golden Sun?
That just
Like, that
sounds
seems a little
awesome.
it seems a little optimistic for something that's supposedly going to end the world.
Oh, we call it the Hell Sun.
Um,
Gotta watch out for that. Yeah, I don't... This game is real generic. It's real mediocre. It's competent, though.
I will say, though, we've been very hard on, well, I've
Yeah.
been very hard on Floating Eye.
uh-huh.
The parents
Jonathan?
come back to life.
Oh, well,
I
that's
don't know if Jonathan knows that or not, but they do get revived.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
Does he revive them?
The Golden Sun does, or the release of Alchemy does. Like,
Does-
there's a flash of light and people are alive again.
Does it bring back all the dead?
No, those three.
Just them?
I think so, yeah.
That's fortunate.
Yeah, right.
You
Pretty convenient.
You three. They did you real rough, huh?
Yeah. I'm just picturing it like, and they like, the characters are like, oh, well, they don't call him Jonathan. They're like, oh, Jonathan must have known all along. And I'm picturing him just sweating in the background, just like, oh, yeah, totally. Like,
Uh-huh.
I knew this was going to happen.
Of course. I knew that if you turn them into a giant three-headed dragon, as the prophecy foretold, when the golden sun rises, the three-headed dragon parents come back to eternal life.
Yes.
Mhm.
As we all know.
As everyone knows. Oh, man, I'm going to have to explain a lot of stuff to some other people, though.
Can I talk to, we haven't hit my favorite part of the game yet.
Please do.
Yeah.
It's the Lucky Fountain game.
Oh, yeah, I love the Lucky Fountain game.
So the Lucky Fountain game, I forget, what's the name of the city again?
Lemuria.
Lemuria. So in Lemuria, there's a fountain where you can throw coins, which is a waste of time. Don't bother with that. Or you can throw lucky medals into this fountain, and they sort of swirl around, and you have to avoid these crabs that are trying to block you and land on the bullseye in order to get better equipment. And it's really, as far as I'm concerned, the best part of Golden Sun.
So it's like how the best part of the early Pokemon games was the slot machines?
Basically.
Yeah, honestly. There is a gambling minigame town late in the game. I did not try any of those, but I was going to once I beat the game. And those could be good.
Yeah, I don't think I saw those either.
Welcome to Gambleville.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, I'm glad when JRPGs manage to put these little distractions in there.
Mm-hmm.
Diversify the otherwise monotonous gameplay.
Yeah, I would like to actually give the gameplay some credit.
Please do.
They do a lot of good like puzzles in the dungeons and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's actually very like doing some innovative things with the psi energy that you get. Every dungeon has its own like puzzle system to figure out, and then you get like the psi energy that you need to complete it halfway through, and then it's like Legend of Zelda sort of thing. I thought that was pretty good. Like a lot of the maps are recursive, so you like once you find the thing that you need to finish it, you come back and it's nice. It's got some good puzzles. So that's good. For a mediocre storyline, it has some good gameplay.
I do like the Jin too. Like I'm not convinced of it as a system.
Mm-hmm.
Or like that's how you do the buffs. But they do each seem to have their own sort of, vague personality, and they're fun to collect, even if some of them are sort of hard to find without the guide, which I bought as a child because I was lazy and a cheater.
Yeah.
But
this was the golden age of game FAQs. So
you go on now too. They still have them all over. Like, and they have that the artwork at the front of all the internet FAQs, like where you use the letters to make pictures of things.
Mm-hmm.
I've never opened an FAQ that didn't have one of those.
Yep. It's nice. It reminds me of a simpler time.
Now they're all filled with GIFs and memes and ridiculous things like that.
Now you got a Golden Sun wiki that you can go to.
You can.
Yep, and it's trying to sell you nonsense constantly instead of ASCII art.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, that looks like the sword from the game.
I'm inspired now. Let's play.
Excellent. Well, does anyone have anything else to add about Golden Sun: The Lost Age?
I think Catastrophe's the coolest summon.
I didn't get that one.
Neither did I, but I watched the video.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm excited to finish it because I have been stuck on the last boss for about the last hour.
There is an optional boss after that as well.
Yeah.
But
I did that when I was a child.
Did you?
Yeah.
Damn, that's impressive. He's tough.
Mm-hmm.
He does not mess around.
Yeah.
Okay, what is the best gin? And here are your choices.
Mm-hmm.
Remember them.
Okay.
Chill.
Mm-hmm.
Sour.
Mm-hmm.
Gasp.
Mm-hmm.
Wheeze. Tinder.
Uh-huh.
That one sort of takes on a different tone now.
Yeah.
And mold.
I think Tinder has to be the choice for me.
What does he do?
He revives someone.
That one's
Yeah.
pretty good.
That
There's
one
another one
comes
too that's
up.
like Rhine or something.
Rhyme is real
Yep.
good.
I
That
like-
revives everybody.
I like him.
Mm-hmm.
Or it or her, I guess perhaps I shouldn't just go with
I don't
him.
know what the pronouns are for the
Yeah.
gin.
I don't think they ever indicate.
They're
Yeah.
little chubby boys.
Mm-hmm. The Venus ones are the chubby boys.
They're all chubby.
Are they?
The Mars one's pretty chubby too.
That's
The
true.
Venus is definitely the chubbiest, but all of them got little tums.
Mhm.
Can we be? Do we all agree that Jupiter is the worst one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think like not in terms of abilities, but like as a character model. I think they're
Yeah.
good.
It's odd.
It looks like some sort of future sprite,
Yeah,
like a cyber creature, and I
like-
don't like that.
weird
Mhm.
head wings.
Can we agree that the Mercury ones are the best? Because they have little
Ooh,
crab tails?
I'm gonna go Venus.
Hmm.
I do like Venus.
It's very chubby.
Venus is definitely a chubby boy.
Yeah.
Well, this is all we have left to say about Golden Sun,
It's the
The Lost
hardest
Age.
analysis everybody likes.
I played this for 40 hours, and this is all it's come to.
Well, thank
It's
you,
enjoyable
M, for
40 hours though.
Yeah. I enjoyed it.
It's a nostalgic 40 hours.
Yeah.
And you got to see those chubby boys.
That's true.
So
Gotta
how bad
collect
could it
them
have
all.
been?
That should have been the catchphrase for this game. Collect them all.
Yeah,
Catch
and they,
them all, maybe. That would have been.
Could they have gotten away with that?
No.
What's the time? When was it released?
it was after Pokemon Red and Blue.
2003.
Nah, they couldn't have gotten away with it though.
Nope.
They should have done it and just said, "Come at us, Pokemon Company."
We can't even afford numbers. What are you gonna take?
Oh.
They'd take the designs, just be like, "These are Pokemon now."
They're gonna make real shitty ones too.
They don't evolve.
They're all named Buttface. All right. So, Pete, it's your turn to pick next.
Yes,
game are
it
we
is
playing?
my turn. So I'm going to pick a platformer off Steam. This is one I actually looked at last year when we were trying to find some candidates for Game of the Year 2018,
Ooh.
but never got a chance to get to it. But I want to play Celeste.
Ooh.
Yeah. That was on my list, too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
Very nice.
Celeste, it's a platformer. It's got great reviews on Steam, so I think it'll be a good get.
Is that
Yeah.
on Switch, too?
I don't know.
The internet certainly will be able to tell us,
Yeah.
Yes,
but it's definitely on PC.
it is.
Mhm.
So we good. All right. Thank you once again, Pete.
Yes, pleasure. A game I enjoyed probably more as a child, but still enjoyed it now.
Mhm. Mhm.
Thank you, M.
Thank you for letting me re-experience this game Definitely worth the revisit.
And thank you, listeners. Reminder, just in case you want to get in touch with the show, you can do so at deeplistenspod, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got our comment section, and deeplistenspodcast at gmail.com. Till next time, peace!